But thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. So, you started by asking the question, what kind of integration are we talking about? That's the critical question. What kind of integration are we talking about? And I will give you a quick example of the kind of integration that I am not thinking about, that I'm not talking about. Several years ago, when I was working as executive director of Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa, based in Johannesburg, one of my responsibilities was to travel to Mozambique regularly. As a Zimbabwean, holding a Zimbabwean passport, whenever I arrived in Mozambique, I would be given a visa for a single entry. And I would come back after a week and get another visa for a single entry. And I would come back after 3 days and get another visa for a single entry. Notwithstanding the fact that it so happens that between my two parents, one of them is descended from people from Mozambique. And notwithstanding the fact that as a Zimbabwean, it's very difficult to get a passport because of all the things that are happening in my country. On the other hand, I also used to travel regularly into Zambia. I used to see many women that were raising chickens on their plots, on their little plots in front of their houses or at the back of their houses. And they would sell these chickens to the big supermarkets. Suddenly, there was an opening whereby ShopRite and other big supermarkets were now not buying those chickens from those women anymore. They were not buying those chickens from those women anymore, but were now buying those chickens from big commercial farmers in South Africa, flying them to Zambia, and then substituting what those women had been trying to do, is to facilitate the movement of African people. But if the agreement is going to be respected in relation to the movement of capital, but not the movement of African people, it will not be the kind of integration that I would like to see. In the Niamey Declaration in Niger in July, when the African Union acknowledged the beginning of the Continental Free Trade Agreement, one of the things they talked about there was the importance of the movement of people. So I'm hoping that this is going to continue to be an issue so that Africans are able to visit one another in our different countries, as well as our goods are going to be able to move across our borders. If we end up with movement of our goods but not movement of our people, it is not the kind of integration that I hope we would support. Secondly, is the question that he also spoke about of how we support the efforts of small people, if you will, that are trying to do something. It is good that the protocol on trading goods seeks to support infant industries. And it says infant industries could be infant industries by women, by youth, and so on. It's going to be very important that efforts be put into making this real so that the small and medium enterprises that are formed, for instance, by women and by young people, are able to compete within the context of the free trade agreement. Another dimension that I think is important to raise from where I sit is the question of the human rights impact of the free trade agreement. Many trade agreements these days recognize that trade has an impact on human rights. You can have a situation, for instance, where you are trading, but you are trading also in guns and ammunition that is going to be used to actually start a war. Colombia and Canada, for instance, have made sure that in their agreement on trade, they have included a clause that looks at the human rights impact of the trade between the two countries. It is important that we think of provisions like that in our laws, in our constitutions, that enable the African Free Trade Continental Agreement to automatically become part of our law, but also to be accompanied by the kind of thing that Abdullah was talking about, which is domestic discussion of the importance of continental free trade. So I look forward to an opportunity to discuss these and other issues that Abdullah raised, and I thank you for the opportunity to chat with you tonight about these issues. Thank you.